The shuttle trembled as it entered Earth's thick atmosphere, clouds streaking across the windows like smeared paint. Inside, Envoy Zelari sat frozen in her seat, her long fingers gripping the armrests tightly. Her skin, a pale silver blue, shimmered slightly in the dim light. She wasn't afraid of the landing. She was afraid of the planet below, Earth, home of the humans. A species her people described in warnings and whispers. Violent, primitive, emotional. And now, she was being sent alone to talk to them. As the only Virellan envoy chosen for this mission, she had trained in diplomacy, language, and protocol. But nothing had prepared her for this fear in her chest. The moment the shuttle touched down, her heart raced faster. The doors opened with a hiss, and the warm, unfamiliar air rushed in. She stepped onto the landing pad slowly, blinking at the harsh sunlight. Soldiers stood at attention, their faces unreadable behind dark visors. Then one man stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark uniform with a silver badge. Human. He was the one she had read about. Commander Eli Carter. Eli looked at her with calm brown eyes, but his size alone was enough to make Zelari take a small step back. His voice came deep and steady. "Welcome to Earth, Envoy Zelari. It's an honor." His tone wasn't hostile, but it wasn't warm either. Just controlled. She gave a stiff nod, careful not to show her trembling hands. "I accept the welcome," she replied softly, voice barely above a whisper. She hated how nervous she sounded. She hated how close he stood. Her people didn't get this close unless bonded. But humans were different, strange. She followed him into the embassy compound. Everything was made of stone and steel, heavy and sharp-edged. Human design felt cold to her, but functional. Efficient, safe. She wasn't sure yet. The meeting chamber was filled with translators, diplomats, and aides, but all of them kept glancing at her with curiosity. Zelari kept her eyes down, focused on her datapad. She tried not to listen when a human aide whispered, "She looks like she faint." She tried not to notice how loud the humans laughed, or how casually they touched each other's arms or backs. It all felt too much, too fast. Eli sat across from her during the first discussion. He asked about her planet, her language, her people's expectations. She gave short, formal answers. Her voice was steady, but her heartbeat wasn't. When Eli leaned forward once, resting his elbows on the table, she flinched slightly. He noticed. His brow furrowed. "I didn't mean to alarm you," he said, quietly enough that no one else heard. She looked at him, unsure how to respond. She had no words for the mix of fear and something else she felt. Zelari was led to her assigned quarters, clean, quiet, and sealed with a biometric lock. Just as she began to settle in, loud noises echoed from outside. Shouting. Angry voices. She moved to the window and saw a small group of protesters gathering beyond the gates. They held signs. Some read "No aliens on Earth," and others simply showed cruel, mocking drawings of her kind. She stepped back in horror. A glass bottle was thrown, shattering near the outer wall. Guards rushed forward. Zelari couldn't move. She had heard of human anger, but seeing it was something else entirely. Her breathing grew shallow. The door burst open. Eli stood there, eyes scanning the room quickly. He saw her, pale and frozen. "It's okay," he said, walking toward her slowly. "They won't get in." She couldn't speak. She could barely think. He reached her, and without asking, placed one steady hand on her shoulder, gently pulling her away from the window. His presence was large, warm, intense. For a second, everything was silent except for their breathing. She stared up at him, expecting to see something cruel in his expression. But what she saw instead confused her. Concern, not pity, not mockery, just concern. "You're safe," he said softly, not moving his hand. Zelari felt something stir in her chest, something unfamiliar. She stepped back quickly. "Do not touch me," she said, her voice cracking. He nodded and stepped away without argument. Understood. He didn't get angry. He didn't raise his voice. He just stood there, calm as ever. She didn't understand him. She didn't understand anything about him. All she knew was that her people had warned her about humans for years. And now, standing before one, all her training felt useless. Because there was something about this human that didn't fit the stories. Something deeper. Something she couldn't yet name. But it scared her more than anything. Zelari sat on the edge of her bed, the memory of Eli's hand on her shoulder still fresh on her skin. No human had ever touched her before. On Virelin, physical contact was sacred, only permitted between bonded pairs or family. But Eli had done it so casually, as if it meant nothing. And yet, it had meant something. Something confusing. Her room was silent, but her thoughts were loud. She didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the synthetic window panels as she got ready for the diplomatic session. Her robes were perfectly arranged, her voice rehearsed, and her heart guarded. When she entered the meeting chamber, Eli was already there, leaning over a console and speaking to another human. He looked up, nodded politely, and said, "Morning." Zelari nodded in return, but didn't respond. Her mind was still tangled from the day before. As the discussions began, the differences between them became painfully clear. Eli was direct, sometimes too direct. He spoke plainly, laughed out loud, and even interrupted her once without meaning harm. Zelari flinched every time his voice grew louder, even when he wasn't angry. She preferred calm tones, soft pauses, silence. He was all energy and motion. She was all quiet control. At one point, when asked about resource-sharing protocols, she spoke for nearly 4 minutes in formal language. When she finished, Eli blinked and asked, "So, yes or no?" A few humans chuckled. Zelari looked down, her cheeks heating up with shame. She didn't understand their humor. She didn't understand them. After the meeting, Eli caught up with her in the corridor. "Hey," he said, slower this time. "Didn't mean to make you uncomfortable in there." She didn't meet his eyes. "You speak like fire," she murmured. "Too fast, too hot." He gave a short laugh, but then stopped himself. "Right, I'll try to cool it down." She tilted her head. Was that an apology? Humans apologized with jokes. Another confusing thing. In the afternoon, she was invited to a shared meal in the Earth dining hall. The table was full of food, strange shapes, strong smells, unfamiliar colors. Zelari hesitated, scanning the options. Nothing looked safe. A human woman encouraged her to try the roasted vegetables. But Zelari made a mistake and sniffed it first, a sign of disrespect in Virelin culture when not done formally. She noticed too late. The human's smile dropped slightly. Zelari sat a plate down without eating. She felt like she didn't belong, like her every move was being watched. She sat at the far end of the table, alone. Eli joined her after a few minutes. He had a plate full of food and a tired expression. "You haven't touched anything," he said. She looked at her empty tray. "It does not look compatible." He nodded, took a bite of something orange, and said, "We could ask the kitchen to prepare something gentler. We've hosted methane breathers before. I'm sure we can manage vegetarian Virelin style." She blinked. "You would do that?" He shrugged. "I'm your host, aren't I?" She didn't know what to say. Hospitality was important on her world, but here it felt different. Less formal, more personal. Later that night, She stood, in the quiet of her room, watching a live transmission of Earth's night sky from the compound observatory. Stars looked sharper here, closer, lonelier. She heard Eli's voice coming from the hallway. Curious, she followed the sound and found him sitting alone in the communications room, speaking softly over a private channel. A child's voice came. Through the speaker, Eli chuckled. "I miss you too, kiddo. Just a few more days, all right?" The voice replied in sleepy tones. "Promise you'll come back?" "Always," Eli whispered. Zelari quietly backed away, unnoticed. Something about that moment stayed with her. That voice, that softness. It didn't match the image of the human she had feared. The next morning, the lights were back, but something had shifted inside Zelari. She moved through the corridors of the embassy more slowly, her thoughts heavier than before. She hadn't called for Eli during the blackout, but knowing he waited outside her door brought a strange calm. It was unfamiliar, like a warm breeze where there had always been cold air. When she entered the meeting chamber, she found Eli already seated at the center console, running through translation reports. He looked up as she stepped in, and their eyes met. He gave a small nod, not a smile, just a quiet greeting. She nodded. Back, the rest of the humans entered, and the session began. They discussed territory permissions and trade corridors, but Zelari found it hard to focus. Every time Eli spoke, she noticed how he chose his words more carefully now. Slower, gentler, as if trying to match her way of speaking. When he leaned forward this time, he made sure to keep his hands on the table. It was a small gesture, but it meant something to her. After the meeting, they were both called to a secondary task drafting a joint declaration inside a glass-walled observatory dome at the back of the embassy. The room had a quiet atmosphere, filled with sunlight and soft ambient sounds from a nearby water feature. It was peaceful. It was also just the two of them. Zelari sat on one side of the curved glass desk, while Eli took the other. A transparent divider, a thin sheet of energy glass, separated their workstations. It was standard for cross-species privacy, but it felt symbolic. Two beings from two worlds looking at each other through invisible walls. For a while, they worked in silence. Zelari translated Virelin text with careful movements of her fingers. Eli typed his edits with quiet clicks. Then he spoke, his voice low. "Is it true your people think we're savages?" She didn't look up. "Some do. I was warned." "Warned about me?" She paused. "About all of you. Loud, violent, emotional." He leaned back in his chair. "That's not wrong," he said softly. "We are all of those things, but we're also something else." She looked at him then, and for a moment, he didn't feel dangerous. He felt tired, human. "What else are you?" she asked. He gave a slow smile. "Trying, always trying to be better." Later that day, she saw him in the courtyard, standing with two human scientists arguing about sensor placement. His hands were moving again, waving through the air as he explained. She smiled to herself. He couldn't stop being human, but maybe that was okay. That evening, she returned to the observatory to find him already there, working late. He offered her a seat. No questions, just presence. They worked side by side again, separated by the same glass. Then, without thinking, Zelari reached up and pressed her palm against the divider. She didn't know why. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something deeper. Eli noticed. Slowly, carefully, he raised his own hand and placed it against the same spot from the other side. Their hands aligned. Only a thin layer of energy between them. No words were spoken. No permission was asked. It was just a moment. Quiet and strange. Her skin felt warmer. Her heart beat faster. The moment broke when the com system crackled with static. A message from the Varellan Council. Zelari stepped back from the desk, her face suddenly cold again. She answered the call in private. When she returned, Eli saw the shift in her eyes. "Bad news?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "They say I am too soft." "Too soft?" "Too close to humans. They worry I have been compromised." Eli looked away. "And have you?" Zelari didn't answer. She walked past him, her long robes brushing the floor. But before she left the room, she stopped and turned. "Do all humans fight so hard to be understood?" He met her gaze. "Only the ones who care." That night, the air in her room felt too heavy. She couldn't sleep. She watched old Varellan recordings of her instructors warning her about human manipulation, emotional traps, physical danger. But all she could think about was the way Eli had looked at her, not as an opponent, not as a curiosity, but as an equal. She didn't know what that meant. She didn't know what it would cost. The next morning, she stepped into the hallway just as Eli was walking by. He stopped. She said nothing. But she didn't move away either. He looked at her with tired, quiet eyes. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded. "No." His lips curved into a sad smile. "Me neither." Then, without warning, she stumbled. Her vision blurred. Her knees buckled. The oxygen level was too high. Her body couldn't adjust fast enough. Before she could hit the ground, Eli caught her. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't wait. He just moved. She gasped as he lifted her in his arms, his warmth steady against her chilled skin. She felt her body failing, her thoughts slipping. But she heard his voice, urgent and close. "I've got you, Zelari. Stay with me. Please just stay with me." And then, darkness. A soft hum filled the air, like a distant song underwater. Zelari's senses stirred slowly as light returned to her vision. She blinked once. Then, again. The ceiling above her was unfamiliar, smooth and glowing with gentle white light. She realized she was lying inside a medical pod, wrapped in thin healing sheets. She felt weak, like her body had been drained and filled again. Then, a shadow moved beside her. A shape, a voice. "Hey," Eli said softly. "You're awake." She turned her head and saw him sitting beside the pod, his uniform wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. He had stayed there, waiting. Her throat was dry, but she managed to whisper, "Why?" He didn't look away. "Because I couldn't let you go." Her chest tightened, not from pain, but from something deeper. Eli reached over and tapped a control panel. The pod opened with a hiss. "Careful," he said as she tried to sit up. "You were barely breathing when I found you. Your oxygen levels dropped too fast." Zelari leaned back, dizzy. "My body isn't used to this planet." Eli nodded. "I know. Your species has lower intake tolerance. We didn't adjust the G quarters properly. That's on us." A nurse entered, a human woman with gentle eyes. She gave Zelari nutrient fluid and helped her drink. Then she left them alone. Zelari glanced at Eli. "You carried me." He smiled faintly. "You're light." "Still," she murmured, "you broke protocol." "Yeah, I do that sometimes." She didn't know how to respond. It was wrong, but it also felt right. She touched the edge of the sheet wrapped around her. "You stayed here all night?" Eli looked at her, his voice quieter now. "I thought you might not wake up. I didn't want to leave you alone." Her hands trembled slightly. "Where I come from, we do not show this kind of care outside family." Eli looked down. "Maybe we should change that." They stayed there for a long while, neither of them speaking, just breathing, sharing the silence. When she was strong enough to walk, he helped her to the observatory garden. It was quiet, full of earth plants, some green, some yellow, all strange to her. The air was filtered, soft on her skin. They sat on a bench beneath a flowering tree with orange petals that drifted to the ground like silent rain. "You scared?" Eli said finally. "You were cold, pale. I thought I lost you." "You didn't," she said, "but I was." "Far," he nodded. "You shouldn't have been alone in that hallway." "I shouldn't have been afraid of you," she whispered. Eli looked at her slowly. "I don't blame you. We humans, we don't have the best reputation. Your people are loud," she said, "emotional, unpredictable." He smiled, guilty as charged. "But you also stayed, watched, waited. That's just being human, too." She looked up at the sky. It was late afternoon, and the sun dipped low behind the dome. "Glass. On my world, closeness is rare. We speak with distance, touch only when bonded. Your ways confuse me." Eli folded his arms, but his voice stayed gentle. "You don't have to become like us. I'll meet you halfway." Her eyes shimmered faintly in the light. "What is halfway?" "It's when two people try to understand each other. Even if it's hard, even if it hurts." "Why would you do that?" "Because I think you're worth it." She turned to him. "Even if I'm not like you?" "Especially because you're not like me." That night, they returned to the embassy building. She walked slowly beside him, still recovering. Before parting, she stopped and looked at him. "Will you stay nearby? In case the dark comes again?" She nodded. He gave a small smile. "I'll be just outside your door." And he was, all night, sitting in the hallway, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, eyes half closed, but never fully asleep. She knew he was there. She could feel it. It was the first night she slept without fear, but in the early hours of the morning, a sharp sound pierced the silence. A high-pitched alert. Red lights flashed across the hallway. Zelari woke, heart racing. She opened her door and saw Eli already, on his feet, checking his communicator. He turned to her, his face grim. "That was from your homeworld. A direct transmission. The Council is recalling you." Her breath caught. "What?" "They said the mission is in danger of failure." "You're getting too close to humans." "I am not." Zelari stood in front of the communication screen in silence. The Varellan Council's message replayed in her head over and over, stern words, cold faces, no room for emotion. "Your presence on Earth is no longer viewed as neutral. The closeness you have shown to the human commander has compromised your objectivity. You are to return immediately." She had bowed her head, accepted the command, and now she didn't know what to feel. Her hands were clenched at her sides as she stared out at the Earth sky from the glass corridor. The colors of early morning stretched across the horizon in gold and pink, the kind of beauty that didn't exist on her cold silver planet. Behind her, footsteps echoed heavy, familiar. Eli approached slowly, holding something in his hands. A folded piece of paper. Real paper. "This just came through the diplomatic relay," he said, his voice low. "Your return shuttle is confirmed?" 6 hours. She nodded, her body stiff, her heart beating too fast. "I have to leave." "Why?" he asked, stepping closer. "Because if I stay, I might start wanting to." Her voice cracked on the last word. Eli handed her the paper. It wasn't a message. It was a printed draft of their peace proposal. "There's still one section left," he said. The closing words. "If you help me finish it, maybe, just maybe, they'll let you stay one more day." She stared at the page. Her name was already at the top, next to his. Not alien and human. Just Zelari of Varela and Commander Eli Carter, Earth Defense. She took the paper and looked up. "One more day," she whispered. "Then I leave." He nodded. One day is enough to make them listen. They returned to the observatory room, the one with the glass table where their hands had once touched through the barrier. The divider was still there, humming softly. Eli walked to his side, Zelari to hers. They sat, the paper between them, and the silence was warm instead of cold. This time, she spoke first. "We open with unity." He nodded. "We end with truth." They worked for hours, writing with real ink, side by side. No data pads, no cold machines. Just thoughts and hands and hearts trying to understand each other. Zelari felt the pressure in her chest ease every time Eli looked at her without judgment. He made mistakes still. He spoke too fast. He tapped his fingers when thinking. But now she didn't flinch. Now she watched. She listened. She wondered. They finished the draft by late afternoon. Zelari set down the pen and leaned back, tired but proud. Eli smiled at her, then turned to look out the window. "Sunset," he said. "Want to see it from the garden?" She hesitated, then stood. Yes. They walked together into the outdoor dome, the warm light casting gold across her pale skin. Zelari looked at the sky and felt the pull of two worlds, one of duty, one of something more. She turned to him. "Do you think this will work?" "It already has," he said. "Look at us," she did. He was nothing like what she'd been told. And maybe she wasn't who she used to be either. They sat under the same flowering tree from days before. The petals drifted again, landing on her shoulder. She brushed one away gently. "Eli? Yeah? Will you remember me after I'm gone?" He didn't smile. He didn't joke. He just looked at her, serious and soft. "I'll never forget you." Her throat tightened. She wanted to say something else, something that was forming, but not finished. But before she could, a loud alarm rang out across the compound. Sharp, urgent, blaring. Both of them stood at once. Eli tapped his communicator. "Security report." A voice replied, breathless, panicked. "Perimeter breach radical group armed north wall." Zelari's eyes widened. "They're coming here?" "Yes," Eli said, "already running." "And you're their target." She followed him, her breath quick, her thoughts racing. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you're the proof," he said. "Proof that we can live together. They want to stop that." Inside the compound, guards rushed to their posts. Blasts hit the outer barriers. Eli grabbed a shield and moved in front of her. "You need to get to the safe room now." She grabbed his arm, eyes wide. "You'll be hurt." "Better me than you," he growled. "Go." But she didn't move. She couldn't. Her legs refused. The fear she once had, the fear of him, of humans, of touch, was gone. Now, the fear was something new. Losing him. Losing what they had built. Losing the first bond that had ever felt real. He turned to her, about to shout again, but stopped when he saw her expression. Not panic, not shock, just silent, pure emotion. "Zelari," he said, but the sentence never finished. A blast rocked the hallway behind them. They fell together. Dust and light and heat exploded around them. And as Zelari coughed and opened her eyes, she saw Eli over her arms shielding her body. Blood on his forehead. He was hurt. And this time, she didn't freeze. She didn't wait. She moved. She crawled to the panel beside the door, her fingers shaking as she activated the security lockdown. Then she turned back, pulling him up, her voice breaking. "Don't say goodbye yet. Not yet." He blinked at her, dazed. "Not planning to." Siren screamed. Shadows moved closer outside. And inside that moment of fear, something stronger held them together. Something deeper than duty. Something that refused to let go. Asterisk smoke filled the corridor as Zelari pressed her body against the wall, her arm wrapped tightly around Eli to keep him upright. His breathing was rough, uneven, but his eyes were still open. Blood trickled from a cut near his temple, and his right leg dragged behind him as they moved slowly toward the sealed medical wing. The walls shook with the force of another explosion from the north wall. Shouts echoed through the embassy halls, human voices yelling commands, warning about breaches, calling for help. Zelari's heart pounded, not from fear of death, but from something she never thought she would feel on Earth, the fear of losing him. Just minutes ago, she had been preparing to leave, her mind full of duty and rules and cultural lines. Now all of it seemed so small. What mattered was right here, her hand gripping his, her will keeping them both moving. When they reached the reinforced medical doors, Zelari slammed the emergency override. The lights turned red. The doors locked behind them. For a moment, silence fell. She guided Eli to a reclining chair and lowered him gently into it. He winced, but managed a tired grin. "Didn't know you were this strong," he joked. "We have dense muscle fibers," she replied, kneeling beside him. "You're lucky I didn't carry you like a sack of grain." He laughed softly, then coughed. "Don't leave me in here if they get through." Her eyes narrowed. "You carried me when I couldn't walk. You stayed outside my door in the dark. You defended me from your own people. You think I'd leave you now?" He stared at her for a long moment. "No, I guess I don't." Her hand hovered near his, hesitant. She had always been afraid of touching, of letting anyone get too close. But now, she reached out, gently took his hand, and held it. His warmth soothed the tremble in her fingers. "This is not what I expected," she whispered. "Me either," he murmured. "But I wouldn't trade it." Alarms continued in the distance, but the pounding had slowed. The embassy guards were fighting back. Maybe help would come. Maybe not. They had no way to know. Eli winced and tried to sit up straighter. "You need to get out of here, Zelari. There's an emergency tunnel under the south wing. You can reach the landing zone." She didn't move. "Not without you. You can't carry me that far." "I don't need to." Her voice was firm. "I'm staying." "Zelari." "No," she said, louder now. "I once feared your kind. I thought you were dangerous, wild, but you risked your life for me. You taught me how to feel safe again. And now you're the one who's in danger, so I choose to stay." His eyes softened. "You're going to get yourself in trouble with your people." "I already have." She looked away for a second, then back into his eyes. "But maybe they were wrong. Maybe what scares them is that I stopped being afraid." He reached up, his hand brushing the side of her face. "That's the bravest thing I've ever heard." The moment stretched between them, quiet, full, heavy with everything unspoken. Then the sound of footsteps echoed outside. Friendly voices. The security team had arrived. The doors opened, and light poured in. A young human medic rushed to Eli's side, while the officer in charge turned to Zelari. "Envoy, your shuttle is waiting." Her heart clenched. "How long?" 10 minutes. She followed as they carried Eli on a stretcher through the cleared halls. Every step toward the shuttle felt like a goodbye. The ship stood ready, humming softly. The ramp lowered. She turned to him one last time. His eyes locked with hers. "Go," he said. "Do what you have to." "What if I don't want to?" she whispered. He gave her a small smile. "Then stay? Not because of duty. Because of choice." Her breath caught. The crew called again, impatient now. She turned toward the ramp. Her foot rose, then paused. Slowly she turned back. she faced the officer. 2 days later, the press broadcasted a historic moment. A joint statement read live by two voices, Zelari of Varela and Commander Eli Carter of Earth. Together, they spoke of hope, of healing, of trust. There were no barriers, no walls. Just two hands finally joined, reaching beyond fear. And as the cameras captured their final words, the world watched something rare. Not war, not silence, but the beginning of something deeper. Something human, something virulent, something shared. The END.